Welcome to the meeting. We've got a great turnout this morning. Thank you for your attendance here for the first meeting of the year. And we'll bring this meeting to order. And please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll start the meeting off this morning with public comment if we have any public comment. Zoe says no. Thank you, Zoe. All right, the Executive Director's Report. Good morning, Georgiana.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, members. It's good to see everyone. I want to start off by discussing our February 2026 Vision Zero crash data slide. Crash fatalities in 2024 was 82. In 2025, it was 82, which is interesting. 2026 year-to-date crash fatalities is 4, and the crash fatalities since the last governing board meeting in December is 16. Just a couple of the reports here. A 27-year-old passenger died after the vehicle overturns and ejects them. This was on US 1 just south of Valcaria Road. The passenger was not wearing a seatbelt, but the driver was wearing a seatbelt and survived survived with minor injuries. So seatbelts save lives. A 25-year-old woman was hit and killed by a 64-year-old driver having a medical emergency at Brevard Avenue in Cocoa Village. I think a lot of us have heard about that when it happened, and that was very tragic. And then a 72-year-old motorcycle driver crashed, pronounced dead at the scene. The 59-year-old passenger later died from her injuries, and this was southbound I-95 in the MIMS area. So these are, a few of the ones that really made the headlines, and it's just really tragic. Sometimes it could be lapses in judgment or risky behavior, and it's just really part of the safe system approach that we need to have safe people, and that we all have a part to play in that. I think Bob's got a comment.
Go ahead, Rob.
Went to not on your statistics, but I went to a celebration of life on Saturday afternoon for a former coworker's son who was 22, just turned 22. Tragic motorcycle accident where 417 meets 528. So very, very close, close by. It was a great outpouring on Saturday afternoon. He had just finished his EMS program, an EMT certification from East Central Florida State College, local, and was going into the fire academy. So,
wow.
Very tragic.
Very tragic. Well, thank you for sharing that, Bob. Moving on, wanted to let everyone know the TPO has issued our annual call for projects, and this is for the new 5th year of the DOT's work program. And so applications are now open through March the 13th, and that is the link to the website where you can have, find additional materials that can help you in filling out the application. If you have any questions, Sarah Crom is heading up that program. Just a reminder, if you are planning to submit a capacity project that is not already on the priority list, just make sure that it has been identified in the cost feasible portion of the long-range plan, which I believe all of those projects are already on the priority list. But just keep that in mind. There are various attachments in your agenda package. I wanted to mention the governing board meeting minutes of December 11th is in the package. And I just want to highlight the Cocoa Multimodal Station federal state partnership grant for intercity passenger rail that has been officially submitted by the city of Cocoa on February the 4th. The TPO is a co-applicant, and developing that application has been a lot of work, And we appreciate everyone's help and patience, and we have a really good feeling about it. We're asking for $57 million, a little over $57 million. And in your package, there is a flyer which kind of gives the details and the match that we all have collectively come together with to be able to match that grant. Moving on, also in your package, starting on page 15, is several informational items from the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations. You know, usually the first meeting of the year, we give a member orientation. We've not had a huge turnover this year with members, so we decided that this year we would forego that and that we would focus on funding. So we have a big presentation today on funding the future because that is an emphasis area of the governing board. And for any new members that would like to go into, you know, MPOs in a little bit more detail, we do have an orientation videoed, and it's on our website. So you can actually go to the website and look at that from last year. Some of the documentation, there's an MPO 101 brief. You know, it talks about what is an MPO, coordinating federal funding, the anatomy of an MPO, and the importance of MPOs, and that's on page 17. And also, there is some information on the introduction to reauthorization for MPOs. As you all know, the current IIJA bill, the current infrastructure bill, expires September the 30th. And so, you know, that's going to be very important, you know, in developing policy as we move forward. You know, MPOs really translate federal policies into regional plans and projects. And, you know, we all ensure that local governments and communities really have a say in how those funds are being spent. And so, you know, the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations and the National Association of Regional Councils are advocating on the federal level for MPOs, that perhaps there be more formula funding as opposed to discretionary funding, that there needs to be an increase in PL funding, which is how we keep the lights on. That is our federal funding that we operate with, is PL 5303 funding, that there be an increase in that funding as we move forward. So very important effort that is coming up. And let's see here. Also, I want to mention we are sending the MPOAC legislative newsletter electronically now. Amanda Carpenter, who is the new MPOAC executive director, is doing a really good job of monitoring legislation related to transportation. And so we're sending that out to you all electronically. And as you receive that, if there's any questions or things you want us to follow up on, please let us know. I think at the next meeting, we'll have a lot more information on how some of that legislation is panning out. Also at your place, you have the TPO, brand new, hot off the press, TPO committee member orientation guide. And so Abby worked very hard on that effort, and so it has a lot of really good information in there, and so that is for your use as well. And then I will finally end on page 3 of your package is a list of all of the committee members that has perfect attendance, and there's quite a long list here, so I just want to say thank you for your leadership and being able to show up to our meetings and attend and being engaged, because we know you all are busy, and it's very hard to attend perfectly every meeting throughout the year. So thank you very much. And Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Georgiana. I believe Adam has a question.
Yeah, so quick, Kohler. Is there anything we can do today to help with that grant that was submitted for COCO? And is there anything that we can do in the near future to help with it?
I would the biggest thing I think you could do, I know Congressman Herodopoulos is very much supportive. In fact, he has a quote in the application. Our, state legislators, the Brevard delegation, we've had letters of support from several of them. But if you are in a position where you're able to talk with them, make sure they understand how important this project is. Because there's several newer members that may not understand the history. So I think that's the biggest thing that you could do, is to ensure that, it's supported by the public. I mean, I think that's important to them. They want to know it is supported. And making sure that our delegation understands that, I think, is very important.
Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, hi, Georgiana. My expertise is in transportation, and that's where I'm most opinionated on. So this is news. It's strictly news. I'm not a financial guy. But I've been reading that right now Brightline has money problems. They don't have enough money to operate their trains. The ticket sales aren't enough to afford the cost for operating their train line. They're looking to loan $125 million to cover operating costs. Their bonds have been downgraded to C. And, as far as the future holds, they're in a quandary. If they raise ticket prices, they reduce ridership. If they keep the ticket prices low, they can't afford to run their trains. How all this is going to pan out, I really don't know. The business people do. This is not my area expertise. I just wanted to make everybody aware of it, that we're looking to put big investments into a company that right now seems to be borderline as far as the bond people go.
No, I appreciate that, Pete. We've definitely seen that in the news. We will be having a field trip with the city of Cocoa, going down to Miami, meeting with some of the Brightline leadership. And so this is something that we can discuss directly with them. But, I only know what you know at this point.
Yeah, Adam?
I have a Kohler. I have an interesting thing to say in regards to what Peter just brought out tonight. And normally I wouldn't have said anything, but it's relevant right now. I represent a senior adult organization, and I plan trips. And early last year, I wanted to bring a group of senior adults down to Fort Lauderdale to have lunch and then turn around and come back. When I did my initial inquiry, I found a specific amount of money that they wanted me to pay for all of my 12 or 14 people. I don't remember the exact number. And when I went into the system a month later, the price had changed. So I called and I asked what was going on. They said they have what they call dynamic pricing. I can't plan 12 people to go and find out that it's going to cost me $10 more when I finally buy the tickets, because senior adults, and anybody for that matter, are likely to be. So I think one of their problems may be that if I sign up and I say I'm going to go in 2 months, and I expect the price not to change on me. So I just wanted to make that comment. I don't know if we can do anything about it other than appeal to the company officials to come up with a better way of doing pricing. But I understand why they're doing it that way, but very few companies are using dynamic pricing. I like the word.
Yes. 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 Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Any other questions for Georgiana? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda, and we have 3 items today. The first one is approval of the Technical and Citizens Advisory Committee meeting minutes from December 8th, 2025. Next is Resolution 26-10, Performance Measure 1, Safety. And the third one is Transit Consulting Services Agreement. And I would look for a motion for approval from the TAC. We have one motion. Did I get a second? Did I get a second from the TAC? Thank you.
And from the
Lisa.
CAC, can I get a motion, please? Motion from Peter Fuskis, second from Greg Stoll. All in favor, say aye. Aye, all opposed. Motion
And
carries.
from the TAC, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, thank you. Item passes unanimously. Next is the presentation that Georgiana mentioned earlier, Funding the Future. Good morning, Travis.
Morning. Can you all hear me? Am I showing up good? All right. Morning, everyone. My name is Travis Hills with Kittleson and Associates, and I'm here to present Funding the Future, hopefully. All right, so a little bit on the agenda for today, so I'll go over a brief introduction. I think y'all are pretty aware of what this presentation may be about and where we're going, but just to provide a little bit of background and kind of set the stage for what we're going to be talking about. Then the bulk of the presentation is going to be spent talking through the state, TPO, and current local revenue sources that are being used to fund different transportation projects in Brevard County. And then we'll wrap up with a little bit on additional revenue options, some ways that we can hopefully kind of close the gap on our long-range transportation plan, cost feasible plan. Then we'll talk a little bit about next steps. So, as you all may be aware, current revenues cannot keep pace with the infrastructure needs. I think folks that have heard about the gas tax being discussed, both at kind of the statewide, the national, and the local levels, really we just don't have enough money moving forward with inflation, with the cost increase of projects, to be able to fund those projects with the current revenue sources that are in place. A lot of them really haven't been adjusted to kind of keep up with that inflation over the last 15, 20, 30 years. So what we're hoping to do with this presentation is really kind of get the info out to you all about the existing funding sources, which are essential to that long-term transportation funding, and then discuss opportunities to hopefully leverage additional funding sources moving forward to help, like I said, close that gap. So from the board, governing board strategic plan, which is adopted in December, the primary goal, the number one priority for the Space Coast TPO board is to expand and leverage regional and sustainable funding sources to increase priority project implementation. So what that's saying, let's go look for other money that we can put on our projects so that we can get things built. So the problem, like I mentioned, current gas tax isn't keeping up with those project demands and those funding sources. And really the performance measure for the board is to look at, to take an active role in exploring what those future funding sources may be at the local, state, and federal levels. So the big thing, I don't want this presentation to be a doom and gloom. We also want to look back on our major accomplishments over the last 25 years. So as you'll see, this table is broken up into a few different categories: widening projects, new interchanges, intersection improvements, and new trails. These are all funded by the various funding sources that I'll talk about in this presentation. But as you'll see, over the last 25 years, there has been a lot of investment and a lot of projects implemented in Brevard County at a lot of different scales. So you're talking about I-95 6-lane widening, major investment improvements, US 1 6-laning, Palm Bay Road 6-laning, Barnes Boulevard, and then the upcoming Ellis Road 4-laning. We've had 5 new interchanges come in on I-95 in the last 25 years. I want to put that in, that is a huge number. That's a big amount of investment, and it has allowed the economy and the residents to grow and thrive in Brevard County. You don't see that level of investment, especially on the interstate system, in a lot of other places around the country, let alone Florida. Intersection improvements, so getting at that more local, that smaller scale. You'll see Babcock, US 192, a lot of investments both from a capacity and a safety standpoint that have been implemented over the last 10 to 15 years. And then also focusing on our multimodal mobility, our PEDs and our bikes, getting those new trail facilities, the Brevard Zoo Linear Trail, East Central Florida Regional Rail Trail, and the Space Coast Trail. So a few other ones that I want to mention as well is all of the projects that you saw in the previous table. Those all had to go through a planning process that included design. It included the NEPA, what we call project development and environment studies, the planning studies. And so the funding sources that we're going to be talking about are also going to fund those different project phases. So the 524 4-lane widening, Clear Lake Road, Malabar Road, and the Babcock PD&E. Don't want to remiss to not discuss bridge projects. So a lot of bridge projects have also been been constructed in the last 25 years. Pineda Causeway over the railroad, 528 westbound bridge, which is now the new eastbound bridge. So a little bit confusing on that, but that happened about a decade and a half ago. The Max Brewer Bridge, and then the NASA Causeway, which is a partnership with U.S. Department of Transportation. And then some miscellaneous projects to kind of round out the full transportation planning spectrum. St. John's Heritage Parkway new alignment from US 192 down to Malabar Road, Apollo Road extension, the upcoming TMC for Brevard County, and then continued annual ITS support for the county, and then the future intermodal rail station. So really the big point here is there has been a lot of money, a lot of time invested in the county in the last 25 years. The number here, this 1.1 billion, probably a little bit low. It's probably closer to 1.5, maybe even up to 2 billion when you factor in some of the upcoming projects. But what we're seeing, and this was shown last year during the LRTP presentations, is a funding shortfall. So keeping in mind that $1.1 to $2 billion that's been invested in the county over the last 25 years, when we're projecting out to the next 25, we're seeing that investment being somewhere in the $2.6 billion range. So you do have those factors, those project costs have gone up. And then what you see on the back end is the $1 to $2 million that's been invested, that's now projected to go down to about $460 million. So you're seeing it on both ends of the spectrum where costs are going up and then the investment coming in is going down. But with that being said, there are funding sources that are currently being leveraged and could be leveraged in the future. So this just provides a high-level overview of the federal, the state, and the local funds that are being used for transportation projects in Brevard County. So at the federal level, you have federal fuel taxes, vehicle sales, heavy vehicle use, and tire taxes. Those all come in through the TPO to fund the regional projects, the technology, the safety, and then your multimodal, so your PEDs, your bikes, your trails, and your transit. We also have state funds, so these are also documented in the LRTP and the TIP. And these state funds administered by FDOT on state roads, state fuel taxes, aviation, document stamps, motor vehicle sales, and rental car. So those funding sources are getting funneled through the state and then come down to Brevard County to be used on state roadway projects. And then what you see on the side are the local funds. So these are locally funded projects, may or may not be in the LRTP, depending on how much is locally funded versus if they're getting federal or state funds to complete that project. But those are also in the same realm of getting those same project types built for our Brevard County residents. So I mentioned before,
Quick question on the previous slide. Do all the taxes and everything that are generated go to the county or area where they come from, or is it divvied up?
so I'll get to that. Yeah, so there are, I'll go into a little bit more detail on the funding sources, both at the state, the MPO, and the local level, and it'll hopefully answer your question. Yep. All right, so I mentioned before the project development process, and so you have, everybody really wants to focus on construction because that's what you see getting built, that's what the residents come and talk with y'all about. But there are other phases in this development process, starting with the planning, and then I mentioned that environmental phase for the NEPA, the PD&E, the design, and then if you have right-of-way and ultimately construction. The funding sources that we're going to talk about in this presentation all can go to fund any of these project phases. So you can really kind of mix and match. You can make sure that you're getting funding from all these different sources to help move that project forward. And it's not just focused on construction. So talking through a couple state funding sources, and so there are a lot of state FDOT funding sources that are out there. We're going to focus on the two that come down directly through the TPO and the county and the locals. So the first is the Transportation Regional Incentive Program. So this is also called TRIP. So the funding source, it's from the document stamp taxes, and this is allocated to the FDOT districts by population. So it's collected at the state level, distributed to the 7 districts across the state based on population and fuel tax share. This, if you decide to use this funding source, so this comes with a 50% match. So if you were to use TRIP, the other 50% of that project cost would need to come from those local sources. This can be used on regionally significant projects, to improve connectivity, economic development across the different jurisdictions across the state and locally in Brevard County. So the one criteria here for selection, this does go through the Central Florida MPO Alliance. So this is where I would say Ellis is probably the best example of this. So Ellis went into the Central Florida MPO Alliance. It had been ranked #1 on the priority list for the region for 10 plus years, it seems like. It's been on there like, for a good amount of time. And so this is kind of going up a little bit higher level. It's a more regionally focused program for this funding. And then examples of those funded projects, like I mentioned, Ellis Road, the future Brevard County TMC is also being partially funded by these funds. The Barnes Boulevard 4-lane widening and the St. John's Heritage Parkway were also partially funded with these funds. So the next, or the last state funding source that we'll talk about today is the County Incentive Grant Program. So this is also called SIGP. So once again, this can be used to cover up to 50% of your project cost. It is coming from the state gas tax, and the local county, the local jurisdiction would need to provide that match to push that project forward. Eligible uses, this is primarily being used on the state highway system, but you'll see a common theme: the connectivity, improving mobility, improving safety, and economic development. Project selection, so this goes back up to DOT at the district-wide level based on state guidance, district priorities, and project readiness. And so it's kind of being rolled up and looked at holistically within all the different projects within FDOT District 5. Some of the projects, so we can do intersection upgrades, roadway capacity, safety enhancements. The LS 4-lane widening is being funded with a little bit of SIGP. And then 2 upcoming projects, hopefully upcoming projects, Hollywood Boulevard 4-lane widening and Wickham Road and Post Road intersection improvements. Those have both been requested funding from SIGP. So it's on the list to hopefully get that funding. So moving into the TPO managed funding sources. And so with the state funding sources, those are coming through the state of Florida, through FDOT. The TPO managed funding sources, that is coming from the federal government. So a little bit of what Georgiana mentioned earlier. So the primary source of TPO funding is the Surface Transportation Block Grant. And this is broken up into 2 parts, so the next 2 slides. The Urban SU funds, about $7 million a year. And this is coming from the Highway Trust Fund. It is formula-based, like Georgiana mentioned, from the Federal Reserve taxes, or federal fuel taxes, sorry. So looking at those different equations, looking at how we can hopefully leverage that at the national level to get more money coming into the TPO for our transportation projects, that is a key priority. The eligible uses, we can look at roadway construction, safety, bridges, basically everything under the sun in terms of our transportation priorities. And then this goes through the list of priority projects cycle. So what Georgiana mentioned earlier, that cycle is now open. This is the pot of money that can be used to fund those projects. It does provide that predictable, flexible, stable funding source. That $7 million a year roughly doesn't change, which is nice. And then the one thing about this is that if the TPO is putting SU funding on a project, they are not an implementing agency, so they are not going to go do construction. They are providing that funding to the locals, whether it's Brevard County or the cities, to go and construct and build that project. That agency needs to be LAP certified, local agency program. We could do a whole presentation on that, but if you're not LAP certified, you can contact the TPO, figure out how you can be if you want to utilize these funds. And then there are certain jurisdictions, Brevard County being one of them, that is LAP certified that can utilize this funding for construction projects. So then the second aspect of the Surface Transportation Block Grant are transportation alternatives, or TA funds. And you'll see that funding source is a little bit less. It's a little bit over $1 million a year. Once again, this is coming from the feds. The eligible uses, a little bit smaller pot of money. These are being used for smaller scale projects. So really what we're seeing a lot in terms of Brevard County, these are being used to deliver sidewalks, multi-use paths, trails, or other community scale projects. So you won't necessarily see TA funds on a roadway widening or capacity project. So just to highlight some of the priority projects that have been utilized Surface Transportation Block Grant funding, either SU or TA. You see the list here. Some of the intersection improvements at US 192. the Malabar Road, Ellis, and 524 four-lane widening, so some of the previous phases in terms of the planning and the design. A few intersection improvements on A1A at 520 and North Atlantic Avenue. The Brevard County annual ITS operations and maintenance allocation, the future intermodal rail station, and then the Brevard Zoo linear trail. And then the TA funds, like I mentioned, smaller scale projects, some sidewalk projects on A1A in Indian Harbor, NASA Boulevard, and John Roads. So I do want to kind of round this portion of the presentation out by emphasizing the Ellis Road four-lane widening. What you see up there, $92 million in upcoming right-of-way and construction. That is fully funded, so that's great news. We have a project fully funded that is moving forward into construction. The thing that I really want to highlight is that second column with all those little acronyms in there. It took 16 different funding sources to get this project to where it's at today. That's not necessarily including the funding sources utilized for any planning, any PD&E, or any design. So just keeping in mind, this is just for the right-of-way and construction phases. And then going back to what we talked about, the TRIP, the SIGP, and the SU funds, portions of those are being utilized for funding this project. Don't want to forget local funding. So Brevard County has allocated $9 million for this project. This project would not have happened without the county putting in that money to push it forward. So now looking at the more local revenue sources that are more applicable to the county and the locals. So starting at the federal level, we have a constitutional gas tax. So this is the 2-cent gas tax. It's broken up into a 20 and an 80% portion. The 20%, a little bit lower of a number. It's collected statewide and then distributed to each county based on population. So going back to Bob's question about kind of how does this stuff get brought in and then allocated out, collected statewide, distributed to the counties based on population for the 20%. Now the 80%, this is collected at the statewide level, but it's really for the bond repayment for either past projects or future projects that are upcoming. So with that being said, the county does see a little bit of that indirectly. Just if there's a project where it's being bonded out by FDOT, some of that gas tax money, or some of that constitutional gas tax money will go to pay for that. So then looking a little bit of a deeper dive into fuel taxes in the state of Florida. So we have 3 different ones up here that we'll talk through for current, and then we'll talk a little bit more about future. But the local option gas tax, so the LOGT as it may be referenced, this is up to 6 cents. It's 6 cents per gallon. This is being collected on gasoline and diesel fuel in Brevard County. So it's collected within the county, distributed to the county and the municipalities based on an interlocal agreement. Annual revenue is around $13 million. And then we also have a local option gas tax. It's the 9th cent. I'll explain what all this means. I have a table here in a few slides to kind of break it down a little bit easier because I know it gets a bit confusing. But this is a 1 cent tax on diesel fuel only in Brevard County. And this is kind of similar. It's collected, this one is actually collected statewide, and then it's distributed to each county based on population. So a little bit of a nuance between the diesel, the gas, and then how they're collected and distributed. Then we have the county motor fuel tax. This is another 1 cent. This is separate from the local option gas tax. And this is collected within the county and distributed to the county as well. Annual revenue on that is a little bit over $3 million. So I do want to highlight and just kind of back out a little bit on the statewide fuel taxes. And what you'll see in this graphic here, maybe a little bit hard to read the specific counties themselves, but really what we wanted to highlight, we have 35 counties out of 67 that leverage the maximum 12 cents on our fuel taxes. So legally, we can go through and leverage up to 12 cents. So we're currently at 6, so that'll come into play here in a few slides. But there are 35 counties leveraging that full amount. Brevard County is one of 11 counties only leveraging the minimum. So just to put that out there, we're on the low end of the scale. There's a lot of counties that are on that upper end of the scale. And so when we talk about future funding sources, this is a key graphic that I want y'all to keep in mind here over the next few slides. So the last current revenue source that I wanted to talk about was transportation impact fees. These are really mainly assessed for new development or expansion of existing land use. So you'll see a couple of the screenshots there of Viera, south part of the county. This is really being applied when you have those new developments, residential, multifamily, commercial that come in. They are different depending on the land use type that is being constructed. Impact fees are collected for all the municipalities via an interlocal agreement with Brevard County. But kind of like what I was mentioning, they were last adjusted in 2001. So just imagine the amount of development that's come into the county in the last 25 years, and those rates are not keeping up with the amount of development that we're having, that we've seen.
Question?
Debbie?
Just to let you know, each city, our impact fees go up annually. So they can go up 4% at the most annually by state statute. And we do raise ours every year.
City of Palm Bay.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so this transportation impact fee slide, let me go back to it. This is county, sorry. Let me just clarify, yes, this is for the county, so the county's fees haven't gone up since 2001.
Yep. Greg?
Yeah, Greg Stoll. The question is, when you say an impact fee, does this mean every parcel that is developed has an impact fee on it, or are there exceptions to the rule?
Yeah, there are some exceptions. I would say overall, yes, there will be an impact fee associated with most parcels, but like with everything, there is no black and white, so there are some exceptions.
If I could give an example, the example that I have in West Melbourne are charter schools. They don't have to pay impact fees. Public schools don't pay impact fees. So yes, there are some that don't. And you know, when he says last adjusted in 2001, I've said it to you guys before, there was a blue ribbon committee that the county assembled to look at the impact fees, and they chose, after like 4 years of kind of freezing the collection of impact fees, not to adjust it. So they ignored the blue ribbon committee.
Thank you, Christy.
All right, awesome. All right, so now the fun part, what can we do about it? So there are a few different options on the table. The first being the local option sales surtax. So y'all may already be very familiar with this, but this can be either a 0.5% or a 1% tax that is done within the county. Currently, this 0.5% and 1%, so 0.5%, are being levied by the Save Our Indian River Lagoon, the lagoon tax, so that's a 0.5%, and the Brevard County Public Schools tax as well. So right now, that 1% is fully accounted for, but they do expire at the end of the year. So I know there's a lot of ongoing discussions about what this looks like for the county at the workshops at a lot of different levels. So what we'll just say is that if one or either of these do not move forward on the ballot, you basically have a 0.5% to 1% that's open and available to go towards public transportation projects. So then going back to the local option gas tax. So I wanted to kind of make sure y'all remember where Brevard County was at in that overall spectrum of the 1 to 12 cents that are being levied. So what you'll see here is this first kind of set of bullets. This is the 5 cents a gallon that can be levied on both gas and diesel. So this is the orange highlighted cells, or kind of off yellow, that are in the table to the right. So what you see, the top row, the 1 to 6 cent, that is being levied for gasoline and for diesel for Brevard County. And then you have the 7th, 8th, 10th, 11th, and 12th cents. Those can also be levied for gasoline and diesel. This can be adopted in addition to the current 6 cent that's already out there. And this is done by a supermajority or referendum by the board, by the Brevard County Board of County Commissioners. There is a requirement to distribute this to the cities based on a 5-year expenditure formula. And these revenues can only be spent on capital improvements, so those future roadway improvement projects, they cannot be used for operations and maintenance of those projects. So then, getting into the confusing part. So now we have this 9th cent that I mentioned before. So this is the red highlighted cell that you see there. So we are currently leveraging that for diesel at the statewide level. We can also come through and leverage that 9th cent for gasoline, which is not currently being levied in Brevard County. The counties can levy this by local ordinance, and there's no requirement, so at the county level, no requirement to distribute to the cities. So then a few other quick funding sources before we move on. Mobility fees. So these are an alternative to traditional impact fees. So what I mentioned before, it's kind of a shift in terms of how those fees can be used. Traditional impact fees are a little bit more structured, a little bit more rigid on what they can be applied to. Mobility fees kind of open that up a little bit, provide greater flexibility to fund sidewalks, trails, transit, complete streets projects within the different municipalities or Brevard County. Now, the key here, you cannot have an impact fee and a mobility fee levied at the same time. So it's a one or the other. So if you were to transition over to mobility fees, that would be a departure from the traditional impact fee model. There is also a public services tax that the county could leverage up to 10%. On the purchase of electricity, natural gas, anything public services or utilities wise. This is actually a pretty reliable long-term funding source. Most residents pay for those services already. The only quirk with this, it does get deposited into the general fund. So there would need to be there would need to be some restrictions put on that funding source to make sure it would go to transportation projects if designated. All right, so a few more slides here. We're getting close to the end.
Debbie?
I have a quick question, sorry. On the previous slide for the mobility fees, would that require a nexus like impact fees?
Require what?
A nexus, so we have many zip codes in Palm Bay, and we can only use our impact fees within that zip code. Would that be required with the mobility fees as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody else? Good. All right. So, last couple slides here. So, another table. I don't want you to read every number on this table. What I want you all to do is look at the bottom right. The two numbers that you see, these are in hundreds of millions, billions. So, the bottom right two numbers, 1.2 and $2.2 billion. This is theoretically how much additional revenue could be generated from the funding sources that I described previously. There are a few funding sources. Mobility fees are not on here, but looking at the half-cent sales surtax or the 1 cent, so this is going to the Lagoon tax and the Brevard County schools today. Looking at the increasing the 1 to 5 cent local option gas tax, and then looking at that 9th cent on gasoline. When you see these numbers, depending on if you did a half or a 1%, you're looking at anywhere between $1.2 to $2.2 billion of additional revenue, basically between now and 2045. So keep that number in mind, because we're going to go back to the chart I showed earlier. So when we're looking at our future needs in the LRTP, $2.6 billion, we're projecting a revenue of about $460 million. That's about a $2.3 billion shortfall. So if we were to look at implementing any of these additional revenue sources at the baseline that you see here, we could close that gap pretty significantly, maybe completely, and you're looking at about $1.3 to $2.3 billion of additional revenue that could help fund those future projects. So with that being said, I'm going to let Georgiana close it out.
All right. Well, that was great. Very informative information. And this is the first time we've really dug into the whole funding discussion. So funding the future, that is the emphasis area for the board for their strategic plan. And it sounds great, but how do we do that? How do you make that happen? In the short term, leverage state and federal funding through the local match. You have to have the local match to be able to leverage the money. So we can't get our hands on the TRIP or the SIGP money or additional federal money. You have to have the local match to be able to bring that money in. So that is going to be very important in the short term. Pursue new local funding sources on the countywide level to assist in funding the TPO's regional priorities. In the longer term, we need to monitor the upcoming federal reauthorization bill that I mentioned earlier, because that's going to be very important in potentially bringing in more federal money, more formula funding to the TPO so that we can fund our local priorities. Engage the legislators in conversations about the state legislation that negatively impacts the State Transportation Trust Fund. You know, there are times throughout legislative session where funding is being transferred out of the Transportation Trust Fund, whether it be through dock stamps or what have you, and moved out to non-transportation sources to be able to fund other things. And that, negatively impacts the projects that we have in the work program. And these are projects that are already funded within the 5-year work program. So that can be disastrous. Only pursue appropriations if they are drawn from the general revenue, which is considered new funding. Appropriations, they can be risky, but if you are going to go after a state appropriation, you need to make sure that it is coming from different, general revenue, and it's not coming from the Transportation Trust Fund, because the trust fund, the projects are already programmed. So if you're taking out of that, something is going to get unfunded. And Brevard County is the one that's going to get hit. If the appropriation is coming out of Brevard County, we are going to pay the price for it. And so we need to be very careful about that. But we have been very successful here recently in appropriations. I know with Ellis, we were able to get one that really kind of helped us with that funding. And then encourage legislators to support and fund DOT's research on potential revenue replacement options for the current motor fuel tax. It's going to hurt us more in the long term, but it's still out there. And we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen with the EV situation, but it's something that needs to be addressed because, the cost of materials and construction is going to continue to go up, and we just don't have enough money. So these are all things that we need to be thinking about, and we need to be looking at all options because I'm not sure what the alternative is. So I think we're going to be presenting this to the governing board. Any thoughts on this? What can the TPO do to kind of help with this process? We're here to educate and convene, but at the end of the day, we need to, it's our elected officials that is going to have to actually do something to make this happen.
Thank you, Georgiana. John back there has a comment.
Howdy, thank you. Georgiana, you just touched on it a little bit, and all the presentations that you saw. So just to be clear with everybody, I have no problem admitting I may be ignorant to it already existing. I didn't see it in your presentations. You touched on it. I also looked at all the users that you had in your presentation using all the trails and the roads and everything like that. The EVs on automobiles, EV bicycles, EV four-wheelers, they're all using, all the transportation systems that we have. Where are they paying their fair share?
Oh my God.
Are they?
They're not.
Do we need to make that maybe a little bit bigger priority?
Well, yes, it is something that we've talked, very good point, John. It's something that we've talked about quite a bit, and we may have glossed over that, but there is some legislation where they are looking into that. It has come up the past several years, for potentially there be some sort of fee for EVs, whether it be a registration fee that goes to transportation, but that is a problem, and they're not paying their fair share.
So, Georgiana, you said that it's been there for a few years. So, what's happening beyond the walls of this room here? Is there a reluctance to do it? Is there a pushback on doing it? Am I missing something here? Because, you know, usually government's very happy to tax. I prefer to call it user fees. But I mean, that seems like a specific area that, so my question is, are you aware of any kind of pushback or reluctance for the EV segment?
I think that anytime you tax something that has not existed before, it can be very challenging. I think it can be a little political. I know that these conversations are taking place in Tallahassee, but, and I think that it will happen. I think it will happen eventually. Some form of tax to be able to help with transportation. But to answer your question, I'm not really sure what the biggest problem is. It's just this tax doesn't exist.
Right.
And Florida has the second largest amount of EVs in the country, right behind California.
Wow.
And so, you know, it's going to take someone to pull the trigger and actually do it.
Thank you, Georgiana.
Yeah, Georgiana, if I may comment, and it has something to do with what John brought out, I can guarantee you, I can tell you right now that neither the county nor the state legislature has absolutely no desire to do any form of tax increase, or if you want to call it fees or whatever. I know that from personal knowledge. It's unfortunate, but it's true. That's why we're only charging 6 cents on local option gas tax instead of going up to the maximum 11. They don't want to be perceived as raising taxes or fees. Yeah, Greg, you had something?
Yeah, so that being said, if we go back and we look at this unfunded slide of 91%, and we put that in perspective, what you're telling me is my crystal ball says we're not going to really be able to make up any of that, at least with current politics.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Yeah, David, you had something?
I don't know if my mic is open.
Yep.
Yes.
My concern is about funding. Does it include streetlights? Let me caveat that a minute. On the Heritage Parkway, there have been some good projects, and they fix the roads. They do some no lights, no street lights. So when you say future projects that are in discussion or figured out, do they consider putting street lights? Street lights are very important. So I ask you, what say you?
What say me? I mean, there are standards. So when a roadway is widened, when it's designed, when it's built, intersection improvements, there are standards that govern kind of when you do and don't do lighting. So I think the first is to, when you look at a project more holistically, is lighting applicable for that project? And then if it's deemed necessary, then it would be included in that funding for the construction of the project. So.
I've traveled a lot of places around Brevard County. The improvements like Heritage Parkway, very nice. A dark corridor. Minton Road in Palm Bay, very nice. That's an improvement. But I'm kind of confused. When you say you're going to fund a roadway or artery, does it include streetlights, or that's a separate issue?
It would include streetlights if that project, if lighting is warranted for that project. So,
Yeah.
I mean, City of Palm Bay folks are here for the
Yeah,
Parkway.
I understand, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. And I mean, for the Parkway, with it being more rural in nature, I would imagine there were probably some lighting discussions
Yes.
made at the time. But
So I'll answer a question. Emerald Lakes, the southern part of Palm Bay, and the Lotus Project and Ashton Park, they're all new projects that are coming. They don't have their, Ashton Park and Lotus does not have their entitlements yet, but part of their design will be lighting. The thing with lighting is we have a lease agreement with FP&L the city would have to pay for the lighting bill. The developer, if they're putting the extension of that road in, that new St. John's Heritage Parkway, they will install the lights, but we have to pay the electric bill. And that electric bill is very high, just to let you know.
Yeah. Eric, you had something?
Yes. So can you go to this slide that was the additional revenue projections? I have two quick questions on that. So what's not clear is the $179 million. Why does it say a range theoretical of 1 to 5 instead of selecting one as an example? It's not, clear what the 170 is. The 179 million. If it was 3 or 4, why does it say 1 to 5?
So we went, let's see, I would have to go back and see whether we were looking at 1 or 5. I would imagine that we did 5% on that revenue projection.
Well, that's an important thing to know because there'd be a big difference between 1 and 5. So if that's 5 and it's 179 million, that's a lot more to get.
Right.
But if that's only 1 cent, then you could multiply that number times 5.
Yep. Yeah,
So-
you could slice and dice it a lot of different permutations, but we'll make that clear.
And then the second question pertaining to that is that, does that additional approval of that potential revenue, could that be done through some sort of voter referendum for the county, or does it have to be a supervisor type of approval, or could voters be involved in that somehow?
Sorry, which one? I was taking notes. Which one?
The additional up to 5 cents or 6, if you're talking about local option fuel tax. Could that be a voter-initiated referendum, or does it have to be more like a supervisor or political kind of decision?
Yeah, so the 1 to 5 cent is a Board of County Commissioners supermajority or referendum.
It can be a referendum.
Yes.
Okay. So that's an avenue to come up with that money.
Yeah, Christie?
Yeah, some of you all may remember Scott Morgan, and he told me a story about, Southern California, where they had a lot of funding problems for different road projects, and it took almost every day getting to gridlock for the taxes and fees to change. And I think it was that combination of grassroots, bugging their legislators for that to change. So it would be nice for us not to get there, but I'm just telling you one tale that was told to me.
Good, Pete.
Yeah, Ginger?
I just have a question on why is it the SU funds, why is that a fixed amount?
So that's a formula based that's coming from the feds. And so just with, I think Georgiana may be able to.
Yes, it is formula funding based on motor fuel tax and population. So the Space Coast TPO, our Brevard County urbanized area, we have the Palm Bay, Melbourne, and Titusville. So that is based on a population amount. Each MPO, TPO throughout the country gets a formula amount. So that 7.1 million is our amount.
Yeah, just one comment. I want to comment on what Christie said. Basically, we have to keep bugging our legislators, county and state, that what the effect of the lack of funding is doing to our transportation infrastructure. I mean, they're aware of it. I guarantee you that. They're aware of it. But we need to just keep pounding on it and keep talking to them about it and keep pressing them. And that's the only way we're going to get anything done.
Pete has a question or a comment.
Yeah, Pete?
How you doing, Pete?
Hey, Trevor. I'm going to go back in time when Georgiana used to work at FDOT, just so everybody knows where I'm coming from. Gotta love experience. FDOT, used to throw parties for engineers and contractors, and of course they get 3 days off to attend the party. We'd all get together and talk crap. So about 25 years ago, in a crap session in one of the rooms, it was presented to us dummies that we were selling less and less gallons of fuel, and unfortunately, the state was getting revenue by taxing each gallon sold. That's 25 years ago. We all agreed that money was getting short. Hell, we'd be glad to dig in our pockets, but we didn't have enough. So we all understood it was a political problem. 25 years ago, we knew it was a political problem, not just in Brevard County, but in the whole state of Florida. So for the whole state of Florida in 25 years, we ain't done squat. Now, well, one question I do have is back in those days, we used to bitch that the feds took more gas revenue from Florida than they gave back. And they used the excuse that we had a lot of tourists driving in Florida, so we didn't deserve all that money that was coming in. Has that ever been resolved?
Yes, Florida is getting 100% back.
Okay, good.
Yes, that did not used to be the case.
Well, that's a little bit of good news.
Yes, yes.
What they used to call us a donor state.
Correct, yeah.
Well, glad to hear that. And, you know, the second problem is getting taxed by the gallon. And now, if we tax by the price of gasoline, too much up and down, and you can't plan on the up and down. So it's a taxing. How do we tax? And, you know, I've brought up in the past that everybody uses the damn crap. I walk on the sidewalks. I take a bike on the trails. Everybody uses the infrastructure. The only way you could get everybody to contribute is the sales tax. And, you know, I've mentioned that a couple of times. The only way you're going to clean the slate up, keep the gas tax, but include the sales tax where everybody's chipping in. And I suggested that often. That is one way to get more revenue in.
Well, if I may, Mr.
Yes,
Chair,
of
and that is a very good point, because I think we know that from a tourism standpoint, you know, I think the estimates is well over 25%. This was a while back, of tourists, visitors are paying, for the taxes for driving here. And so we have a lot of tourism. So it's not just, our Brevard residents that's going to be paying this. It is our visitors.
Well, see, that's why I like the sales tax. We have so
Correct.
many visitors that us Florida citizens wouldn't have to cover 100%
Right.
of the costs. It would be spread to other states too that visit us. But the thing is, you would have to dedicate that 1% strictly for transportation. If we put it in the general budget, we all know how politicians like to spend on their little pet projects, and that's something you were mentioning earlier, that make sure they take it out of the general fund and not the trust fund. So we'd have to make sure that money goes into the trust fund where it's dedicated to transportation projects, and that's the simplest of all solutions. Everything I saw up there is politically complicated. The way I do business, I hate the politics when they get involved. They always end up costing more money, and I get less out of it in my pocket. So, I've always recommended increase the sales tax by maybe a penny, maybe 2 pennies. Put it in the trust fund. That wipes out all the BS and puts more money into the trust fund. Plus, we get out-of-staters put a big portion of it.
Thank you, Pete. I believe Stephen has something.
Yeah, great presentation. I know this comes up every 4 years or so after the long-range plan adopted, right? We realize that we don't have enough funding to go around. So it's fantastic giving options, but I would like, it'd be awesome at the board to talk about the cost of inaction, right? And I think that bar chart filling the gap tells that story. If you don't do anything, you're going to get that 9%, right? So you have to do something.
And
then I also think it would help if we were to talk about costs and taxes on people, if you could maybe give a rough estimate of how much it would cost me as a Brevard resident a year out of my pocket, and then also how much the tourists are paying per year out of that fair share. Just come with rough numbers. I think that would help with some of the conversation on Thursday.
Thank you.
Well,
That's good.
I do want to just let everybody know that $462 million is not guaranteed either. So those are all revenue projections based on what we think may be coming. So it could be more, it could be less. You just don't know. And so, so I do want to make that clear. That 460 is not a guaranteed number. So.
Yeah, I'd like to emphasize that I was talking for the whole state, because even Orange County, that has all the above revenues that we don't, they have transportation problems too. So it's not going to get solved here in Brevard County. All that would help, but if we're going after the nut of our transportation problem on a statewide level, which it is, we have to have a whole brand new approach, and that's what you were asking for. things to bring to our local politicians, maybe to our local legislatures, just to give them some ideas that they can run with that would do a whole lot of good state-wise. If it's not fixed state-wise, doesn't do me any good. I go to Volusia County, I'm in bumper and bumper traffic. We need to get a handle on it to where we all improve our quality of life.
She's collecting
Bob.
more tax than we are.
Aaron?
This is
Bob's
disgusting.
got something.
I have what I think is a simple question. On the surface transportation block grant page where you have those priority projects, where are they described? Where's the details of them described?
So those are going to be in the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program that the Space Coast publishes every year, and the FDOT work program.
So there's nowhere I could look right now?
No, yeah, you can go, so search for the Transportation Improvement Program on the Space Coast TPO website.
Yeah, okay, I thought I did that. Okay, I'll try again.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's under the core work products.
Yes, go under
Drop
core
down.
work products and the TIP. These have been priorities for many years that this committee and the board have supported, which is the reason why they were funded.
Yeah, I was specifically looking at A1A and SR 520. I thought we just did something there, so I'm wondering what else we're planning.
That has
But
been, that's completed.
Oh, it is?
Yeah,
Yep.
that
Oh.
is done.
These are a mix of prior projects and upcoming projects.
Well, there goes my confusion.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sorry
All
about
right.
that.
Got it.
We tried to keep it simple. We had like phases in there on the original slide. So yeah, it's
Versus not would probably be helpful, but yeah, thank you.
yeah.
I also want to mention the A1A and North Atlantic International Drive intersection and Cape Canaveral is not on here. This is not everything, but the TPO funded either partial design or all of the design and some of the right-of-way funding for that intersection realignment. So it's that project in Cape Canaveral as well.
I believe, Bob, you had something?
Yeah, to my first question and somewhat related to some of the things Pete brought up, how do we get the most money? Is it based, I know some of them are, are population related. Could you potentially switch that to taxes generated here, stay here? So what is in our best interest? Is it to go off the formulas that are there, or to look at everything that's generated here in Brevard County stays here? And which is, that could be something that we could go and then ask our legislators to change. Or if it's less than the amount we're getting, then we say, oh, okay, we'll stay the way it is. But that was kind of what I was getting at for my original question.
Yeah, I mean, I think a more holistic view, like you said, of each funding source, what's coming in, what's coming out, is important. We've tried to provide that foundation here. I don't have that answer for you. I think that's probably the next step with this, is to actually dig into, are there one or two funding sources that we want to dig into and go and try to either leverage or get more or change. But everything is tied to the politics, the statutes, and so there are some limitations of what you can do with some of these funding sources. Yeah.
Everything is free.
Right.
Just looking at what's going to be in our best interest to get the most money.
Right.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Travis? All right, Travis, great
Awesome.
presentation and discussion. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Travis.
Next up are reports, and the first report is from the FDOT. Good morning, Chuck.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Chuck Hoppernoll with FDOT. Oh, you're getting me there, I got you. Okay, thank you. Okay. The full January 2026 construction report is included with the agenda packet for your reference to current construction projects in Brevard County. I will highlight upcoming and completed projects, and if you have any questions about any other projects, I'll be happy to answer them after the meeting. So the first upcoming project is the resurfacing of 514 in Palm Bay, which includes the redesign and rebuild of pedestrian curb ramps to meet ADA standards. Scheduled start date is February 9th, today, with an estimated completion in the summer of this year. Second project I'd like to mention is the resurface of State Road 513, which also includes adding a bike lane and reconstruction of sidewalks and curbs also to meet ADA standards. This project was supposed to start here shortly, but the contractor did ask for an extension to March of this year. So now the new start date for this project will be March 24th. And finally, we have a completed project, the resurface of US 1 southbound through Titusville, along with additional pedestrian safety measures, has received final acceptance on January 6th of this year. As far as events coming up, we have an open house that is scheduled this week on Wednesday, February 11th, to present the resurfacing of State Road 507, along with other safety improvements from 5:30 to 7 o'clock p.m. at the Front Street Civic Center in Melbourne, Florida. Shortly after that open house, we'll have another one on February 19th to present the removal of an existing two-way left turn lane and replace with a raised median on North Courtney Parkway, State Road 3. The event will be held from 5:30 to 7 o'clock as well at the Divine Mercy Catholic Church in Merritt Island, Florida. Both events, of course, will have representatives of FDOT and the consulting firms working on this project to answer any questions, and the public will have the opportunity to submit their comments as well. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Chuck. Any questions for Chuck this morning? All right, appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chuck.
Next up is a Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Trails Advisory Committee. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning. Sarah Crum, Senior Transportation Planner. We had a relatively short BPAC meeting. We held our annual elections, as well as also they received a presentation on the public participation plan that this committee recommended approval of back in December. The next BPAC meeting will be held on April 27th at 5:30 p.m. at the Brevard County Government Center. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions on Sarah's report?
Yeah, Adam.
Comment, Kohler, District 1. I spoke with Georgette last time we met in regards to what I'm going to talk about for a minute today. There's been some discussion about doing away with the Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Trail Advisory Committee, and I don't favor that. What I suggested, and unbeknownst to me at the time, was that there needs to be an emphasis on the e-bike. And I'm just wondering if this committee could be concentrating more on the e-bike issue and less on the other three. Just my comment. Thank you.
Well, we do plan, FDOT is going to do some sort of presentation regarding e-bikes either in April or June. We've had some issues scheduling another presentation, so we're going to see where that pans out. So yeah, we definitely agree with you regarding the e-bike.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Sarah?
Great.
Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, just a comment that e-bike thing really needs to be statewide. You know, us users just aren't smart enough to know the regulations for 20 different municipalities in each county, let alone if we're traveling into different counties. It's just too confusing. You can't keep up. There's not enough signage, and we hate to get tickets just because we didn't know what the rules were. And so it has to be statewide. That local and countywide just really doesn't cut it for any type of bicycle or pedestrian or any type of user. It's just too localized and too confusing. And I said before, I don't like that the state put it off on the localities. That wasn't cool, but they did it, and that's what we're stuck with.
So I would encourage everyone to go back into your agenda and look under Georgiana's executive director, or I guess you didn't include the MPOAC legislative report
Not in the package,
okay.
but it was sent out.
It was sent out. There is a piece of legislation. It's actually made it pretty, I was looking at it this morning, and I don't want to quote it where it is in the process, but it has been getting momentum. So I think we might see something statewide. So definitely, Pete, Adam, anyone interested in what they're doing statewide for e-bike legislation, go read that piece of legislation.
And we will keep you up to date as it moves through and make sure that's shared with the committee and the board.
Adam?
I want to be the Kohler again, District 1. I want to be very emphatic in this regard. Pete, I don't agree with you. Every initiative that has been successful in the past, regardless of where it's been done, has always had someone leading the charge. And if Brevard County can lead the charge on this to get the state involved more so, then so be it. But waiting for the state to do something is not, in my view, a smart thing to do. Thank you.
Hey, Adam, visit our county commissioner, get the ball rolling, brother.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Next up is the Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board.
Well, I'm going to talk to my district manager, Katie, and I'm going to ask her to do something on Thursday.
Is there not a transit report?
Yep, I actually missed that. We'll do that next. You can go ahead.
Good morning, Patty Rendon, Transportation Planner. The Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board had its first meeting of 2026 on February 2nd. Highlights of the meeting include the annual member orientation and sunshine law presentations, as well as the approval of the professional transit consulting services selection and the annual community transportation coordinator evaluation recommendations, which you can see those slides on page 116 of the package. I'll also be giving a quick informational refresher on the role of the TDLCB as one of the Space Coast TPO's committees. So according to Florida statute, transportation disadvantage means person who, because of physical or mental disability, income status, or age, are unable to transport themselves or to purchase transportation and are therefore dependent upon others to obtain access to healthcare, employment, education, shopping, social activities, or other life-sustaining activities. The Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board, or TDLCB, works to ensure transportation opportunities are available for all residents, regardless of age, ability, or economic status. The TDLCB meets quarterly to oversee the Transportation Disadvantaged program at the local level by providing input on various issues, plans, and programs. And the primary focus is directed to the needs of the transportation disadvantaged population, specifically older adults, persons with disabilities, persons of low income, and children at risk. The TDLCB advises the Community Transportation Coordinator, which is Space Coast Area Transit, and also reviews price and service levels, safety concerns, eligibility, and other pertinent issues. So this is an organizational chart of the Transportation Disadvantaged Program. The Florida Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged, or CTD, is an independent state agency created by the Florida legislature within the Department of Transportation to accomplish the coordination of transportation services provided to the transportation disadvantaged population. The CTD then designates the Designated Official Planning Agency, or DOPA, which is us, the Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization. And each county or service area has a DOPA to assist the commission at the local level in accomplishing the coordination of safe, efficient, and cost-effective transportation services to those who are transportation disadvantaged. Every 5 years, the DOPA designates the Community Transportation Coordinator, which is Space Coast Area Transit. Every county in Florida has a designated CTC that is responsible for the delivery of quality, safe, and cost-effective transportation services for the transportation disadvantaged. Each local CTC is responsible for the actual arrangement and delivery of transportation services, and those services may include door-to-door paratransit, on-demand transportation, and/or bus pass programs if a fixed route system exists in the community and is accessible to the individual. And as you can also see, the Space Coast TPO appoints members and provides staffing to the service area's TDLCB or local coordinating board, and the TDLCB then advises the CTC, which is Space Coast Area Transit. And one last update, during the February 2nd meeting, Carmen Baez, the Transit Mobility Manager for Space Coast Area Transit, gave a report on the TD report card data, breaking down what types of transportation disadvantaged trips were taken from July through December 2025. So out of a total of 46,601 trips, 24% were in the medical category, 13.02 were in the employment category, 1.79% were educational, 1.83% were nutritional, and 59.37 were other life-sustaining trips. This category includes trips for the purpose of conducting personal business, so banking, social services offices, visiting spouse or parents in nursing homes, shopping, including excluding grocery shopping, and also social or recreational engagements, after-school programs, volunteer workers, and support groups would also be included in this category, along with transportation to hurricane shelters, if that was accomplished during that time. And that concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A comment, that life-sustaining at 59%, you don't have to go back up there. That was interesting. I never would have believed that.
Yeah, good point. Now we'll hear from the Space Coast Area Transit. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. First of all, ridership. Ridership was slightly down over the last 3 months by 1.5%, which was not too alarming. I did some investigating, and usually every year that seems to be the way the year starts out. Everyone at Space Coast Area Transit is very busy. We have 2 annual reviews that are due. Not annual, but one is the Transportation Development Plan, which is due for an annual update at the end of this month. The Transportation Development Plan is a 10-year strategic policy-driven document mandated by the Florida Department of Transportation to guide local public transportation improvements. It serves as a blueprint for operating, developing, and funding transportation services, requiring major updates every 5 years to maintain eligibility for state grants. The plan requires annual progress reports and possible plan adjustments, which I'm doing now. The second one is a federal review. It's our triannual review, which is also due at the end of this month. The Federal Transit Administration Triannual Review is a congressionally mandated once every 3-year audit of recipients of federal public transportation funds. It evaluates compliance and statutory requirements, including financial management, procurement, and maintenance, ensuring the grantees properly manage federal grants. And that ends my report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public engagement report. Good morning, Abby.
Good morning. Good morning. Today's public engagement report is going to have a little bit of a fresh perspective, as this is our first meeting of the new year. We're going to take this opportunity to reflect back on the impact of our public outreach methods and tools from 2025, which are captured in our annual Measures of Effectiveness report. So the complete report was in your agenda package, which I all know you read with enthusiasm. And while we don't have time to delve into every detail today, we are going to highlight a few key areas. And so it's important to note that this report is not a requirement like our public participation plan that we just updated in December. Instead, it functions as an accountability document, really, that helps us track our engagement tools, and it also provides a transparent assessment of how we're reaching the public and how we continue to enhance our activities and monitor the tools that we use. So here's a brief overview here up on the screen and in your agenda package of the various public participation methods and tools that we use to engage the public in transportation planning. Some of these are local municipalities and organizations also use too. So for example, face-to-face meetings have been a standard practice for TPOs and MPOs over the years. But over the past probably 5 years, we've witnessed significant changes in how we host both public and internal meetings. So we're now observing a shift in those community preferences, many expressing a desire to meet in person, once again, now kind of post-COVID. So we have done a lot of speaking engagements last year, a lot of workshops and open houses. But we also understand the importance of including a virtual component now for those who might not be able to attend after-hours events or during the workday. So something like live streaming, like we're doing today, or providing webinar option remains beneficial for those who favor that virtual participation. All of these methods serve as a valuable channel to ensure that the public has multiple opportunities to engage, and really it expands our reach at the end of the day. And we also employ various tools to communicate these opportunities, and I'll discuss the analytics of those in just a bit here. So when we're evaluating our methods and tools, it's really crucial to understand how we connect with and engage underrepresented populations and communities of concern. We know that not every public citizen has the same equal access to public information that others might have, depending where you're at in the community. And so to ensure well-rounded public participation, we develop tailored messages and delivery techniques for specific projects and plans, and collaborate with essential stakeholders in the communities, especially for projects and programs. And this approach really makes sure that we're having meaningful communication and dialogue with all those that are involved who might be affected, especially when there's a project involved. So this is a list up here on the screen that highlights some of the primary stakeholders and agencies involved that we make sure that we reach out to at the beginning of a plan or program, and to make sure that we are reaching them the way that they desire. And also we now, our outreach events, we're very strategic in nature. We make sure that it reflects the diversity of our communities and that we're spreading the love amongst our Long County here. Okay, so moving on, this is a brief overview of our engagement strategies, and I really want to emphasize that this summary and report is not really viewed as a quantitative tool. And what I mean by that is we have an overarching target so that we make sure that we have a goal in sight, but we're not making direct comparisons between year over year, because a lot of what we do is so cyclical in nature. So our numbers are going to vary according to the plans, programs, and studies that we have going on. So for instance, you may see a huge increase in the open house, workshop, and webinars attendance this year. Well, that's because we hosted 2 significant workshops, the North Merritt Island Pioneer Trail Feasibility Study Workshop and the Southern Brevard Trails Master Plan Workshop, in 2 extremely engaged communities. So I just wanted to point that out because I think it's important as you kind of take in the data. All this to say, we strive to meet our targets and exceed them most of the times, but we also understand that long-range planning, again, is kind of cyclical in nature. So what does this look like day to day? We actively seek out the community. We cannot assume that everyone will come to us. We need to go into everyone's backyard, so to speak, and it's our duty to engage and educate them. That's on us. We collaborate with trusted community partners. We connect with community influencers like chambers, Rotary clubs, HOAs, municipal partners, and of course, our committee and our governing board members. And we require a collaborative effort. We really cannot do everything alone. Leah and I are 2 people for public engagement. And so, it really does take a village here to achieve these goals. Okay, diving into social media, everyone's favorite topic. As of 2025, approximately 5.4 billion people are now using social media, representing about 65 to 66% of the world's population. So with social media becoming increasingly woven into our everyday lives, it really opens up numerous opportunities for businesses and organizations like ours to connect with an audience online. And the key takeaway is that whether your organization is active on social media or not, conversations are happening about it. So why not be a part of them? It's our responsibility to guide those discussions as well, have that dialogue and engage with our citizens. The worst thing you can do is have a social media page and not engage with your audience, or at least correct misinformation. So each platform serves a unique purpose, caters to different audiences, and additionally, each has its own metric of effectiveness, which is in your report as well, and it highlights really the level of engagement. So, speaking of, here's a concise summary of our tools and the corresponding metrics that you can find. Again, this is in your full report for detailed definitions. And here on your right, you'll see that after reviewing last year's metrics, we plan to adjust our targets a little bit to align with current algorithms, allowing us to track consistent growth across our platforms, which is definitely something to take pride in. And our data really shows that the majority of our public citizens and stakeholders receive all their information in a digital format. Our digital communications, like our newsletters and press releases, consistently demonstrate a strong open rate, meaning people actually open it when it comes into their inbox, which we appreciate, and it has some steady click-through rates, so they're actually clicking our links as well. But in the next coming year, we plan to assess whether we should transition away from our current email marketing platform to see if something's more integrated with our website or perhaps a different product that's more trusted by end users. And then when we look at social media, I think our numbers kind of speak for themselves, very impressive, but we're very strategic about that. When we're sharing our story on social media, we approach content strategically, and we really make sure that they're relevant, meaningful, and educational. We maintain content calendars, posting schedules, monitor platforms. Additionally, our team produces fresh content that incorporates trends and data to make sure it remains relevant to the Vision Zero mission. And despite launching different campaigns each year, we continue to grow our engagement and most importantly, grow our audience. That's where we're gonna end on this slide. While traditional measures of effectiveness kind of track your analytics, this year we took a little bit of a deeper dive to really see how residents engage with the TPO and our tools that we have. So this is a snapshot that focuses on engagement quality, rather, quality over quantity. The actions taken and the data-informed adjustments that will help us improve. So not only are users reaching our content, but really they're engaging with it, clicking through emails, spending time on our website, viewing multiple pages, and watching video content. And so these metrics demonstrate that our public efforts are really effectively reaching new audiences and maintaining that meaningful engagement. And so at the end of the day, we're including others in transportation decision-making. And that's all I have for measures of effectiveness before I transition over to Leah for outreach events.
Thank you. Any questions for Abby?
Yeah, Adam?
Okay, Abby, thank you. I love your presentations, and I look forward to them every time I come to a meeting. I have a question in regards to our audience growth.
Mm-hmm.
I like the number of 195 followers for LinkedIn, 235 for Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
But how does that compare to what the numbers were before? In the future, could you be kind enough to show us what the numbers were before the additions? Secondly, I don't need a comment on that. Secondly, now that we are not using X, this is 2 years now, right? Are you exploring other options? There are other platforms out there that are similar that are, let me just say this way, they're more liberal than X is?
Well, at the guidance of the board, last year when I updated our measures of effectiveness, we actually are still using X. We just cannot access any analytics on it. So it was at the guidance of the board that we actually stay on that platform, so I still do utilize it.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Yeah.
So in regards to my question, if you don't mind,
Mm-hmm.
are we looking for alternatives to X that we can pull analytics on?
I mean, I'm always open to looking at other platforms that are going to work best for our organization. There are certain ones that we're not allowed on, such as TikTok.
Well, that's not its purpose. We
Right.
wouldn't get anything off of TikTok
Right,
anyway.
right,
My daughter is
exactly.
very much engaged there, and there's nothing of value
Right.
for us on that
Right,
platform.
right,
So I agree
exactly.
with you there.
Yeah, I'm always looking at what is trending for other organizations like ours that in the government sphere, and there's always something new coming about. So yes, I'm very much keyed in with the platforms that are working well for government organizations, and just monitoring, making sure that it would be the best use of time and return on investment.
Are you open for suggestions from us in the future?
Yeah.
Thank you.
No idea is a bad idea.
Greg, you had something?
Yeah, let's have a little fun. I say X formally reported analytics for Space Coast TPO.
Okay, and with that, I'm happy to turn it over to Leah. She's going to share.
Yeah,
Oh,
hang
I'm
on.
sorry.
Pete's got it.
Sorry.
No, you asked a question. Well, you probably don't even know you asked us a question. You asked why wouldn't people take advantage of social media? I don't, so I'm going to give you the answer. I do not like the Google man or his girlfriend, Alexa. If they're out of my life, I'm happier.
No, and that's valid. That's valid. I think a lot of people, I have actually seen in my age group a lot of people who have gotten rid of social media or have dialed it down a bit, but there's always going to be some digital platform out there, but I understand what you're saying. Okay. Anything else? All right, I'm going to turn it over to Leah, who can talk about some of our engagement opportunities and efforts.
Thank you, Abby.
I apologize about my voice. Super Bowl was last night, but we're going to get through this, okay? So Leah Nepo, Community Engagement Coordinator. So throughout January and February, the TPO remained a strong, visible, and active partner in the community. Through frequent outreach events, we have continued to try to reach residents across all corners of Brevard County, reinforcing our commitment to safety, education, and collaboration. So during January, the TPO partnered with the City of Melbourne and Melbourne PD at their Touch a Truck Day, engaging families and residents through hands-on safety education. And in Grant Valcaria, we served as certified helmet fitters at the BMBA-led community bike ride, ensuring all participants had properly fitted safety equipment before they set out on their ride. Additionally, at the beginning of January, we partnered with the Brevard Homeless Coalition for their Build-A-Bag Day, where we provided hundreds of lighted armbands, Vision Zero fans, and other high-visibility safety materials. This event focuses on increasing visibility and safety for individuals experiencing homelessness. Friday, February 6th, so just this past Friday, marked Crossing Guard Appreciation Day. Crossing guards are a cornerstone of our community safety, and we were excited to celebrate these everyday safety superheroes. This year, 2 Brevard County crossing guards, one from Indian Harbor Beach and one from Satellite Beach, were nominated for FDOT's award Crossing Guard of the Year. In addition, the TPO attended celebrations hosted by Palm Bay Elementary, where we provided appreciation goodies, and another one by Melbourne PD, where we were able to engage with nearly 20 crossing guards. To further support our partners, we launched a crossing guard toolkit on our website in early January. This toolkit included easy-to-print thank you cards for kids to fill out, student-friendly activities for teachers designed to help schools engage children, and showing appreciation to their crossing guard. Alrighty. And throughout last semester and continuing into this semester, the TPO has been actively presenting in driver education's classrooms across the county. The purpose of these classroom visits is to reach young drivers at a very critical point, right before their license and before unsafe habits have the chance to fully form. And we introduce them to the principles of Vision Zero as a shared responsibility among all road users. These presentations were interactive and engaging, encouraging students to think about distracted driving, the real-life consequences of everyday decisions behind the wheel. These lessons included an interactive game and provided tips to students to mitigate their opportunities for distractions in the vehicle and on an e-bike and on a skateboard and all the ways they may be arriving to school. To ensure the effectiveness of this outreach, students' learning was measured using pre-test and post-test measurements. This data-driven approach allowed us to evaluate whether key messages are actually being retained and understood. And as shown here, every participating school, that was 4 high schools, demonstrated a significant increase between their pre-test and their post-test score, indicating a meaningful gain. These results reinforced the value of the early education as a tool for a long-term behavior change and safer roadways throughout Brevard County. On social media throughout February and continuing into March, we encourage everyone to like and repost and engage with our content, as we will be highlighting Hit and Run Awareness Month, Black History Month, and our upcoming Florida Bike Month campaign. And then this is just a snapshot of our upcoming weeks. We have even more outreach events than this. But as you can see, the TPO continues to remain engaged. And I just want to point out, in March, not all of them are up there, where we will be doing a spring break countermeasures tour, a crosswalk pop-up safety event happening at some pedestrian safety measures throughout the county. So on the heels of Abby's Measures of Effectiveness report, stay connected with us, go on our socials or on our newsletters, and continue coming to our meetings to find out what we're doing, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Yeah, Adam.
Question.
Yeah.
Kohler, District 1. Is the bike, Write It Down for Titusville on your events to participate in on February 28th? I noticed you have something up on 28th already.
Yes, so that was something that was originally on our events to do. But we want to make sure that when we're going out to outreach events, it's very strategic and we're hitting Brevard County residents specifically. So that ride is traditionally, a lot of people travel to it. We have in the past done it. And this year we were supporting by providing materials rather than coming out and tabling at the event, especially while Titusville Chamber of Commerce went under some change over who was leading the outreach event as well. So this year we're supporting by providing materials rather than tabling.
Okay. So do you need volunteers to help with this endeavor?
Oh, no, sir. I
Thank you.
appreciate that, though.
Thank you.
Leah is saying that we're spreading the love around throughout Brevard County, but we participated in that event last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we participated in it last year. And this year on the 28th, we will be at Cape Canaveral with Brevard County Sheriff's Office serving certified helmet fitters as they run an e-bike safety class.
Well, I wanted to let you know that I agree with you. I'm a volunteer over at the Chamber of Commerce, and yes, it attracts a lot of folks from out of town. So under the circumstances, I'm not surprised that you're going there instead of to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a little typo on that, it says BSCO instead of BCCO.
Oh, thank you.
Anything else for Aaron, or Leah?
All right.
Thank you, Leah. All right, next
Team
is...
win? Did your team win?
Who'd you root for?
Oh, the Eagles, go Birds.
Wait a second. They weren't playing.
They weren't playing, so that means New England, right?
The last item on our agenda is the local government report. Are there any individuals that would like to report on any local government issues?
Debbie.
Yes,
Hi.
Debbie. Hi.
City of Palm Bay would like everyone to know that they are considering a fire protection assessment district to fund fire rescue expansion for growth using a non-ad valorem assessment instead of raising citywide property taxes. This is going to be going to a special meeting to our city council on February 27th to let Brevard County know that we may be putting this on a ballot, and we're going to be doing a study to see how that ad valorem tax will be used.
Interesting, thank you.
And also, we're hiring 2 senior planners for the growth management department.
Great. Anyone else? Is there anything else to be brought forth? Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.